Welcome to DRC Live, powered in part by Classic of Denton and the Denton Record Chronicle. The views and opinions expressed by the show hosts and their guests are those of the show host and guests, and not necessarily those of the sponsors, DentonRadio.com, or the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau. For more information, visit the Policies and Procedures page at DentonRadio.com.
Afternoon, Denton. I'm Lucinda Breeding. I am the features editor at the Denton Record Chronicle, and this is DRC Live, the once weekly show where we talk to you about what's coming up in the business community, arts and entertainment. And if you're a regular viewer of DRC Live, you will notice that my usual sidekick, business editor Jenna Duncan, is not here. You are not Jenna Duncan.
I'm not.
This is David Pierce. He is a Denton resident, musician, composer, and he's also the founder and creative director of Denton's Day of the Dead Festival, and I think, sometimes more importantly, the creator of Cirque du Horror. And before we dive into Cirque du Horror, which is very exciting, I do want to just kind of tell you guys about something that the Denton Record Chronicle has coming up. We have a Denton Memories, the Early Years Pictorial History book coming out in November. We're taking pre-orders right now, and if you have some history buffs in your family, if you love history, this could be a really great Christmas gift, great holiday gift. The books are discounted at $15 until November 17th, or through November 17th. The 18th, the price goes up to $29.95. So if you want to put in an order, just go to denton.pictorialbook.com and fill out your pre-order. We've gotten some images from archives, local archives, and readers have submitted some photos for us. So if you want to see some Denton history, Denton County history, that would be the way to do it. So check that out. You have until November 17th for it to be $15, and then after that, it's basically $30. So, but now that I've done that little plug, let's talk Cirque du Horror. Now, Cirque du Horror is actually the event, the show, the music that planted the seed for Denton's Day of the Dead Festival, which is 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. this Saturday in downtown Denton. But I wanted to really talk to David about Cirque du Horror because it started it all. So what I want you to do is first just explain, what is Cirque du Horror? It's a mysterious name. What is it?
It sounds more menacing than the show is, for sure. It's somewhere in between a harvest, an innocent harvest fest, and a really scary haunted house that you see on the side of the road. It's something that is a theatrical event that is fun for the whole family, that was written and created with the intention to fill the void that was it was in between not scary and way too scary. So.
Oh yeah. Because this time of year you can get your fill of super scary and
That's
gore.
right. Sure.
So yeah. And tell us a little bit about what kind of show is it? Is this like a play that has a narrative through line, or is it a little bit different than that? Tell us a little bit about what they might experience when they go to see Cirque.
So it's definitely a nod of the cap to vaudevillian sort of performance. It is a series of a collection of little vignettes. It's songs and skits that, very much like music theater, however, there is not one story that is told throughout other than just the spookiness of Halloween, So they all have that common thread, but it's something that we might have a narrative piece, or we might have something that's only dance without any lyrics that would just dance to music, or we'll have, of course, songs that vary from creepy to really funny,
Yeah. So we see some characters that we associate with the season, like witches,
Right.
skeletons, but we also encounter maybe some characters that we might not necessarily think of all the time.
That's right.
The mutants, I guess you do think of as being part of the season, but yeah. So a lot of variety. Lots of variety.
For sure.
Excellent, most excellent. Now, this is going to be the 11th? No,
This is the 11th year.
yeah, so 11 years ago, and now I'm curious, what was and what continues to be your inspiration for Cirque du Horror? Because it is not the same show every year.
That's correct. I think I think it's because it's grown organically in the way that it has. I I never really had a vision of where the show was going to be when I created it. And because it keeps taking turns left and right, and I almost feel at this point I chase the show, it's inspiring to me always because it there's always some new element that is exciting for me to develop, to write for. For example, this year, you know, we've been focusing a lot more on some of the visual elements of Cirque. And, you know, that was something that, not coming from a theatrical background, just coming from the musical side of things, was always a weak spot for me. It was always my handicap. And now, as we're going into the future, we've got a real strong visual team that's working with the show that's really taking it up visually to another level.
If you're new to Denton, or you've been around Denton and haven't seen Cirque du Horror, if I could just kind of describe the visuals that you pretty much experience every year. It's very DIY. You can look at the set pieces and see that these were constructed by hand, lovingly by hand, and that, you know, there's this tremendous sense of invention in the show, especially in the visual part of it. There's a charm to it that, to me, it makes me think of my childhood Halloweens when my mom would sit down at the sewing machine and make our costumes.
Right, very much
And,
so.
you know, much love to the more plastic, mass-produced aspect of Halloween that definitely serves a need, and it's an important part of our retail community. Yet there's something charming and sort of magical about looking at the stage at Dan Silverleaf, because this is not at the campus theater, this is not in a theater space, it's at Dan Silverleaf, which is a downtown bar, to be able to really look and see, I see brush strokes. You know, I see brush strokes, and I wonder how they got that thing to jump out like that.
Right.
And where are those creepy glowing eyes under that bed coming from?
Exactly.
It has that charm to it. Well, since you mentioned the visual part of it, I consider you sort of first and foremost a musician, a composer, and an arranger. Every year that you've produced Cirque, everything that you've written for it, it always has this really energetic, imaginative, and really almost animated sort of sensation to it, which makes me wonder if, while you're writing this music, while you're creating these things, if you're maybe seeing this in your head and that kind of creates that motion and color and theatricality, or if that's just, you know how to do that with music.
Right. No, it's very much it's very much seeing the vision in my head. Getting inspired either by a character or a story or a plot or even a melody that I can imagine a certain character singing, that it doesn't matter how we start the process. Once the process is started, the entire time that I'm creating it, I am trying to write and visualize the piece from start to finish. Yeah. And what is always the wonderful surprise along the way are the little bits of either, whether it's comedic timing or whether it's an effect that's meant to frighten you and make you jump out of your seat a little bit. Those little fun surprises come up along the way, and I figure out how to, once they're created, make them work musically. But generally speaking, yeah, I think of the whole thing through composed and try to always keep this concept of what I want the audience to get out of it visually, not just sonically.
You know, I am curious too, and I know I've sort of cracked on you about this before, that I kind of sometimes worry about Danny Elfman, the guy who writes for Tim Burton, the filmmaker Tim Burton. I'm worried about him retiring or going off to his great reward, and Tim Burton being like, hey, there's this guy in Denton. He can score my stuff. But no, are you a fan of animated media and film?
Oh, yeah.
So that's sort of part of your sort of
Sure.
personal fandom.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's part of that plays into the magic of childhood that you were mentioning, the innocence that we all have, and the fond memories of being a kid, and you know, having a handmade costume, or you know, seeing cutouts placed on the wall. You know, all of that stuff is why Cirque is created. It's I want the children to maybe get a dose of something that they don't get now, and then I want the adults to feel like they can remember what it was like for them to be kids.
Well, and for those of you who haven't experienced this show before, one of my perennial favorites are the shadow puppets. Almost every production of Cirque du Horror has involved a really sort of sweeping, epic musical piece that's illustrated for the audience through shadow puppets. And it's incredibly lively, very imaginative, and somewhat technical too.
Sure.
And you mentioned giving kids something that they might not really get to really have. But I think even folks my age,
Right.
there's not that much of an opportunity for us to experience that kind of, art by hand.
Right.
You
right.
know?
Sure. For sure.
And as far as that goes, you mentioned your visual team,
Yes.
which is responsible for the aesthetic of Cirque du Horror. Do they get to hear this year's music as they're putting together their concepts and then building
Yes.
things like set pieces? So you do tell them, hey, check this out, listen to this, see
absolutely.
what comes up. I was wondering about that.
Nor
Okay.
Normally, the way it'll work is our visual director, Tara Lynn Hunter, and I will meet as early in the year as we possibly can. It seems like we meet earlier every year. So
There you go.
One of these days, one of these years, we're going to meet in February, and we'll all be ready by the summer. But we will meet up over the summertime, and I'll send her a bunch of music, and I'll let her know what I'm working on. And depending when I finish all the new pieces that I'm writing or not, she can already start visualizing what she is seeing from the music. And then we collaborate a few more times, and we form a plan, hatch out a plan, and then we meet with our choreographer, with Karen McIntyre.
Local dancer, Karen
That's right.
McIntyre, yes.
We talk about what we want to see visually from dance, and then she choreographs it. Then we go to costumes and props, and we have lots of wonderful, wonderful people helping out with that.
It takes hands.
It does. It really
takes
does. And for example, one of my best friends, his wife Shanda Guerrero, is doing just an enormous amount of work this year, more than she's ever done. And
Wow.
so shout out to her. But most of what you're going to see prop-wise, costume-wise on the show this year was made by her hands and her sewing
Wow.
machine in her living room. So that is the
DIY.
That is the DIY.
The DIY
that is
aspect
the
of it,
we're
which is
not.
it's a very Denton sort of habit.
I think so. Yeah.
Just creating something because you want to see it happen.
That's right. That's right.
And the other aspect of Cirque du Horror's visual presence, especially during the festival, there's an immersive aspect to it too. Tell the listeners and viewers what the front of the entrance of Dan Silverleaf looks like.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we do everything to transform it visually right from the start. So right from the get-go, when you see Dan Silverleaf on this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday, you'll see red and white fabric streamers that start at the rooftop and fall all the way down with a big lit flashing marquee that makes it look very old world circus.
Yeah.
Very a turn of the century circus. And then once you walk in, of course, you've got tables with these wonderful ornate centerpieces that are all very beautiful and perfectly themed with lights, and there's cobwebs and spiders and bats, and there's all sorts of wonderful things. So you really feel like you're going into like another world for a moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that is not kind of, that's exactly what we want to do,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really special. It's, we're used to seeing sort of that turquoise storefront for Dan's.
That's right.
And then when you step onto Industrial Street on Day of the Dead and the day after, it looks like a tent. Suggests a tent. Now, also over the years, we've come to see a lot of beloved and well-known Denton artists on stage. Paul Slavens has been a part of this for many
Definitely.
years.
Yeah.
Eric Polito of Midlake, and who's a huge part of Denton's creative community. Who might we see this year in the production?
So we've got some of the Denton charmers that are out there. Jeffrey Barnes, of course, Brave
Jeffrey Barnes
Combo,
from
he's
Brave
in
Combo.
it. Steve Carter from Little Jack, who is Little Jack Melody, he's there. And we've got Polly Maynard.
Of course, yes, Polly Maynard. Yes.
She's doing some wonderful stuff. And we've got a lot of people that have been here for many, many years. Marion Powers will be singing. We've got
I love her.
We've got some new faces. We've got my sister-in-law, Mimi Pierce, who comes in from California to sing a couple of special numbers. and I'm sure I know I'm forgetting somebody, but
I know it's always bad. It's always bad to do this because we forget somebody. But
well, and of course, you can't forget Grampula. You can't forget
oh my gosh.
Ricky Derrick. Yeah.
Yes, and if you read the Denton Record Chronicle tomorrow, if you take a look at Denton Time, Ricky Derrick is going to be on the cover of Denton Time talking about Grampula, this geriatric vampire who is pretty sure he's got jokes.
Yep. He's
along with some other stuff.
That's right. He's got a lot.
He's got a lot going on. This show, it seems to pack Dan's every single year. What do you think it is about Cirque du Horror that has made Denton embrace it, and also has created, to me, almost a crowd, a remnant of a crowd that I think of as the Rocky Horror Picture Show people who like to go and kind of like sing along,
right?
Or maybe yell at Grampula.
That's right.
Maybe ruin his jokes a little. What do you think it is about this show that has cultivated this embrace by the community, but also a following?
I think that years ago we had one of the productions filmed professionally, and there were interviews after the show, and there was a local musician that was quoted as saying that this show could only exist in Denton. And so I think that's hitting the nail on the head right there. I think that because this town is such a special town, because there's such a strong presence of artists and super creative artists, and you've got such strength with the music school
Absolutely.
here, it's just a little perfect mix of everything to be able to create something like this. So the fact that I was able to write anything and have it performed at that level, I think that what blew people's minds away was seeing such a high performance level and maybe not knowing what to expect, and that's kind of what we've always stuck with. We've always tried to keep the notion of it's just very, very special, and it makes you happy to be a part of this community and live here.
Well, and if you've never gone and this is your year to go, you really should go. We're going to give you ticket information here in a second. Really cool thing. There's so many cool things about Cirque. I mean, this is just one of my favorite parts of Denton every year. There is an orchestra of the undead right there in Dan's bar with you, and they are painted as the undead.
They are.
And David appears as the demon, the demon conductor.
That's right.
With an angry red face and very large set of horns and a top hat.
That's right.
So be prepared to not just hear the music, but feel it. And, be prepared to see the perspiration on the performers' faces on the stage there at Dan's. And as always, feel free to come in costume, dress the kids up. The kids get to gather at the front of the stage, and candy is tossed.
That's right.
From Dan's Silverleaf stage. So there are going to be 3 performances.
3 shows, yes.
4 and 9 p.m. this coming Saturday, October 26th.
Yes.
And then 6 p.m. on Sunday, the 27th.
Correct.
Now, the ticket prices they're kind of a range. If you pay the $20 ticket, you'll get a reserved seat at a table. And then for adults, for general admission, which means you just grab a spot, stand there, it's $15. And then $7 for ages 4 to 17, or just kids?
I think it's 12.
Is it 12?
Children from 3 to 12 are $7, and or 4 to 12, and 3 and under are free. That's right.
Yeah.
And we have something I'll just say real quick. We've got front row seating on that go all the way up to the stage that have a slightly higher price point. Then we've got a row of elevated bar stool seating with bar stools that's directly in front of the stage, but that sits right behind all of the tables on the floor, so they have a perfect view of the stage this year. And then, of course, like you mentioned, so two price points for that, and then general admission, standing. Yeah.
And so, just I would recommend getting your tickets now, because this is only it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's 3 days away. You can either get tickets at www.cirqueduhorror.com, and that you should be, if you're watching this on Facebook, that link should be in the text. But check it out if you have not seen this, and especially if you've got kids who are almost as excited about Halloween as they are Christmas, they'll really, really get a kick out of this. So come check it out. that's all I have for DRC Live this week. Come see Cirque. Enjoy Denton's Day of the Dead Festival, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday. It's a free festival, but there are vendors, live music, dance, the beloved coffin races.
That's right.
Pumpkin patch with plenty of games and inflatables for kids. There's a community altar, parade. So just come check it out. But once you're there, you do need to just pick up a ticket if there are any left to go see Cirque du Horror. So, but just join us next Wednesday at 2 p.m. for DRC Live, and take care, Denton.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. We want to thank our partners and sponsors who made this show possible. And now stick around for a word from all of us here at Discover Denton. Do you love live music? If so, make Denton, Texas your next vacation. Find more information at discoverdenton.com.